Hi everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. It's a bit daunting seeing all of you here, but I'm going to give it a go. When I told my boyfriend that I'd been asked to give a talk this morning, he asked me, so is it going to be about vaginas? And I thought, I don't know how it's happened. It's a bit of a mystery that that's what everyone thinks that I do, because I think there's a lot more to me than just vaginas. When I look at my Facebook feed, pretty much anything anyone posts or writes about or articles that they do relate to women and their vaginas, which I'm very grateful for, so you can keep sending them. But as I said, there is more to me, I hope. And so today I decided that I would do something a little different because the topic is mystery. And I decided to start the talk by being a little mysterious and taking the talk in a different direction to what you're probably used to. So that's mostly what I'm known for. And now we're going to move on to something that I'm less known for. So could you please dim the lights, please?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Say it again, Sarah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. One more time. Ready? Yeah. Hit it. There's no sunshine. It's only raining pouring in my life. And my love is pouring me to tears. So please, work a little bit harder today, alright? And I won't sing. Get it up. Come on, get up.
I finally went to see David. I've been putting it off for a while. I know I shouldn't because I don't think he gets many visitors. He sits in his room overlooking the train station, waiting, I think, although he would never admit it. I always find him in the same seat, the pale grey foam sofa bed, probably from IKEA or somewhere as innocuous. He never comes to the door because it goes without saying it will always be open. This time was no different. I let myself in and walked down the passageway of grey linoleum and paler grey walls. The only light source came from the sitting room, nothing from the hallway itself. The funny smell was still there, somewhat stale but sweet, probably his mother's perfume, a week old after her last visit. The passage always seemed so long, walking to a meeting with David, always knowing I'm going to find things the same.
We will rinse another tear, only sweat and blood. I promise you. Up. Ready?
He was wearing blue jeans, a tight red t-shirt, and camel hide boots. His t-shirt emphasized his perfect body, the strong, firm muscles, and the deep tan. His hair was carefully gelled as always, and his hands perfectly manicured. Perhaps that's what he does all day. I'm sure a fair proportion of it is spent preening, but I never catch him doing anything but waiting, ready for his guests, his imaginary entourage. His sitting room is rather small and cramped. Grey linoleum floors again, and grey furniture. There's one plant in the corner. I've never been able to work out whether it's plastic or not. He offered me the same seat he usually does, the one opposite him, on the other side of the coffee table. The coffee table that doubles up as a barrier, separating his world from mine. Behind me the window and the world I'd just come from. Behind him all his photos crammed onto one wall, fighting for attention but losing terribly to the reality in front of them. On either wall, a mirror reflecting the infinity of his world.
Oh, 1, 2, 3. Oh, I got it. Alright, ready? Alright, show me first. Shake it, shake it, shake it. Shake it, shake it, shake it. But shake it, shake it, but just a little. Alright, pick it up. Are you ready? Oh. Alright, again. Again, pull it in.
We sat across from each other, taking one another in. I'm never sure whether he senses my discomfort. I can't help feeling that he sees me through a grey wash of pity. His blue eyes darted across me, scanning for faults and flaws. Or at least that's how it always feels in our long moments of silence. I found myself wishing I'd worn something different. My white trainers felt a bit old and scruffy. I knew my faded jeans were pulling across my hips and thighs as I sat down, and my loose beige shirt made me feel bulky and unfeminine. He always had an eye for these things, has always found beauty and appearance of utmost importance. "Have you been recently? How is it?" he asked. He never was one for pleasantries. He always gets straight to the point, at least when it's something that concerns him. I knew the question would come, but I hadn't expected it so early in my visit. Stupid, really. It is, after all, the reason I was there, the common bond that brought us together. Problem was, I hadn't worked out what to say. How do you explain to somebody that life inevitably, avoiding his eyes and the expectancy in his face? I knew what he wanted to hear, that it had all collapsed without him, that we had realized what he had always known, that he was the foundation that kept us together. Or maybe he just needed to hear that I hadn't been myself, out of loyalty or compassion to him.
Alright, ready? Squats, everybody knows the squats, eh? I can do the squats, eh? Alright, send me an angel, people. Are you ready? Yeah! Much better. One more time. Are you ready? Yeah! To pop up your body? Yeah! Oh. Here we go. Send me an angel. For Christmas. Alright. There we go. Here you go. Go down. If you believe in love, keep on going. Keep on going. Slowly.
And pride can distort perspective. I wish he were nothing to me, just an acquaintance that has crossed an invisible boundary line and has become cumbersome, like the extra body weight I am still trying to lose. My visits to him are not out of loyalty or respect, they're out of longing, because we both fill the same space for each other. We both belong to a time in our lives we are desperately trying to cling on to. He sits at home, holding on to his memories, and the belief that he will return to his spotlight, in front of us all, his enthusiasm spurring us on, his body tempting us, yet encouraging us to improve, to be better, to be like him. And I go there to share the dream for a few moments, to join him there.
Let's go down. Slowly. Think about an angel, and you'll make it. Alright? But it's just a feel about it. Alright, go to promote. Just feel it. Slowly. Feel it, release. Doing your tissue. Go down. Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Hit it. Boom.
Again he asked, "Have you been? Are you missing me?" Is it not the same without me? So many questions and only one reply. David, it's just not the same without you. The spark has gone. We wish you would come back. I wish you would come back. As I stood up to leave, I found myself staring at him. He had his back to me, looking at his photos, him and all his ladies, when he was a star for an hour each day. Then he turned his head and looked at the reflection of his reflection, never ending. And I knew with him it really makes no difference. He is in the moment, an eternal cycle, and he will never leave. He has no wish to. Thanks for listening to that. So this is a work I made a number of years ago, and I'm sure you're wondering how I got from that work to this work, the work that I'm making now. When I started working on this talk, these were questions I started asking myself. Where did the work come from? How did it manifest out of my creative subconscious into words rather than as a painting or a sculpture? Did I make a conscious decision, or was it the result of some kind of creative process I didn't have complete control over? But that's the thing, isn't it? It's the act of creating is a mystery. As a friend said to me, every story has a beginning, a middle, and a twist. Doesn't that apply to everything that involves creative expression? You have an idea, you sit down to realize it, and even though you spend time making it happen, I don't know, it's suddenly done. You've suddenly made this thing. I don't know about you, but when I make a work, I'm completely in the moment. I stick one nail, and I'm thinking about that nail. And then I stick the next nail, and I'm thinking about that one. How do you ever know how an idea is really going to turn out? It sometimes feels like creatives are alchemists. We're always trying to turn base metals into gold. What I loved about art when I was a child was its mystery. It was a means of escape from the real world. Wanderer Over a Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich is one of my favorite paintings in the world. I used to stare at it for hours in a book, and I always used to wonder, what is he thinking? You know, why is he there? Is he happy? Is he sad? You know, what is the scenario? Here's another one that I used to look at a lot, which is Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. You wonder, what's the relation with those people? Do they know each other? Like, are they happy? What's the mood? You can lose yourself just thinking about what is going on there. And of course, I mean, you can take it to the point of Picasso. You know, it's a less figurative piece, but you still ask yourself questions, and you can look at it for hours and think about it. The power of these works is that they trigger the imagination of the viewer. And much as I loved falling into the creations artists had made, I also wanted people to fall into my imaginings. I desperately wanted to be an artist, yet I found myself frustrated by the materials of the art world. You know, paint, steel, canvas, photography. For me, these mediums were the language of art, and they were languages I really struggled to communicate in. I was interested in mundane, ordinary experiences and the interesting slip where things become messy, where ordinary things like thoughts, desires, and neuroses become obsessions. And I couldn't paint those feelings, and I couldn't sculpt them, and I couldn't take photographs of them. And I know that lots of artists have been very successful about doing that in the past, but for me, it wasn't something I was able to come to easily. I found that words and language had the uncanny ability to unnerve and get under people's skins in a way that visual art images and modes could not. Words functioned in a similar way to my concerns. On the surface, they seem simple and clear, and yet they're often full of innuendos and subtexts. This is because they do not hold a sacred position in society in the way that kind of traditional art forms do. They're the raw matter of life, the building blocks of relationships and social interactions. I started working with everyday issues such as relationships, violence, women's experiences, personal impressions and memories, all of which were based on collective emotions that are experienced individually and feel deeply personal and unique to everyone. I wanted my works to be experienced like a piece of music. No matter what mood you're in, you're going to find something that talks to you, that expresses the feeling that you're feeling. And that's an amazing thing about music. I intended my work to function in this manner because the subject matter was deeply personal, while broadly based, which made it accessible and familiar to the listener. For me, I wasn't able to bring the baggage of experience into my works in traditional ways. I started writing my ideas down, and they became works like the one you've just heard. Did I know how they would turn out before I made them? I mean, I've thought about this a lot. It's a very difficult question. Of course, I had an idea about what I wanted to put across, but I think that if I look at it, every single work I have has that twist at the end of it, the beginning, the middle, and the twist. But it's more complicated than that. There's a twist in the twist. There's mystery in mystery. The works we all make are about our experiences, how we see the world, how we live. But meaning can never be fixed, much as we try. The works, once they are made and on the wall or on the screen or whatever, there's alchemy that takes place. There's alchemy again. They become laden with the weight of you, the viewer's history and experience. Not mine, the creator's. I always say to people that when I make a work of art and I put it up on the wall, I give it away, because it stops being about me and it starts being about you. And again, that's mystery. So I started my career making artworks out of words, which I carefully layered and put them together so that some things were concealed and other things were revealed. And I realized that the act of creating layers to obscure meaning or to blind you with it was at the core of my process. And so I moved on to using other materials. You know, to begin with, I was sort of paralyzed by all these art mediums, and so I turned away completely. But, you know, slowly I started finding that I could start tapping into things that were more relatable as art forms. In most of my work, there's a tension between the surface, which is, you know, usually seductive and sparkly, and the meaning, which in most instances is dark and complex. For instance, these works, which are called Mother's Little Helpers, they're sculptures which are the molecular structures of the most overprescribed drugs on the market. And these works are made of sewing pins and beads that women wear on their on necklaces. So, you know, they have the seductive thing, but then they have a sort of dark undertone to them. Another example are these drawings that I did, which are made from false eyelashes. And this series is, these are images that I found on Tinder, which men use on their profiles to lure women in, which, you know, is something that I find, you know, an interesting modus operandi to get a date. But anyway. So these are works that I made in 2012 and 2013. I was interested in what happens to desire when your job is desire. So I went and interviewed people in the sex industry about this question. I wanted to know. And the works manifested in these wall pieces, the back seats of cars, deconstructed and adorned with the accessories that women wear, so earrings, pearls, necklaces. For me, you know, the reason that I chose to use them is that they're the things that you lose in the throes of passion, just as you lose yourself in a way. But I wonder how you as viewers see them. How do you experience them? Do you look at them like islets and wander in the fog? and see something of yourself or your experience in them. That's sort of the thing that I often question when I make a work. I just completed a body of work called Lady Garden, which are flowers made from false fingernails. The word plays with the cliche of the flower as a symbol of femininity and innocence. However, my flowers have carnivorous throats and protruding tongues and create an uncomfortable push-pull between the seductiveness of the surface, of the shyness of flowers, and the visceral abject nature of the false nails from which they are made. I'm counting on the fact that the viewer is going to look at those false nails and have a little, they're going to experience a little, you know that feeling where you get a chill up your spine, the chill up the spine you feel when you see a pubic hair on the toilet seat, or when you see a fingernail on the bus seat. You know, that uncomfortable feeling. So, I'm hoping that's what you're going to experience. But the handling of my intentions and the way you receive them determines the success of the work. Whether if you're not moved by them in some kind of way, that perhaps suggests that the work is less successful. But, that's a completely different topic, which I think that we could discuss for hours, and maybe I won't go into now. I do think, so I think for me, what's interesting is this, the mystery of creativity and the kind of mystery of how you experience a work. I do think it's important just to note that, in spite of this talk being about mystery and actually being about the kind of mode of, the actual way that we create, that my work does have an agenda. And there's certain topics I'm interested in and certain messages I want to convey. I do like to call myself a rotten feminist because the issues of women, which the women around me in the world that I can relate to, are at the forefront of my work. The complexity of how to transform my ideas into something tangible is something I struggle with every day, and I'm sure that as creatives, most of you are, I think that that's something that you can relate to too. But much as my work is about feminism and desire, the process I go through to realize my imaginings is probably very similar to everyone else's. It's like we're all going through the same process. And when I'm sitting in my studio working, I sometimes sort of think about that I'm like a witch casting sequin spells, or that I'm stirring my cauldron of nails and they magically transform into things, like this or this work. So I think, that's pretty much what I have to talk about, but I thought that it would be nice to sort of see if anyone gets if you see the mystery and creativity, and whether that's something you think about when you make in the same way that I do. Thanks. I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts or... Yeah.
I kind of get the sense that you're almost trying to capture this constant movement that's almost not fixed, but it's always moving and changing. As our society changes, as our relationships with each other change. Something that keeps me up at night. The Romantics used to talk about love, how love itself can be fixed within two people, and that becomes a constant that never changes. Right? Whereas now, I find that in our modern world, we're almost experiencing a movement that is constantly in motion, in a sense. Could you say that that's what your work is about?
I think when I started working, this idea of love was a very strong theme. And I think in some ways the theme has shifted in that it's moved from this kind of love and this need to be kind of connected to someone else. I've become more interested in the idea of becoming more connected with yourself as a woman. But I do think that I think that that early piece that I played you was about that thing of we're always kind of shifting. It's kind of, the terrain is very unclear. And I think you're right. Before, these notions of love and romanticism were very they were held, they were the pinnacle of what you aspired to. And now with the way, with Tinder and the kind of very fast pace of life, it's something that's more difficult to hold on to. And I think we've also become a society that's very, we get bored quickly. And we also, it's very hard to hold our attention for a long time. And also, there's this constant bombardment of information and imagery. And so we're always thinking that there's something better. And I think, the idea of love before was something that when you found it, you had it. And now when you have love, you're thinking that there's probably better love out there. So I think the times and social media and all this stuff is making things more difficult in a way.
Hi, Francis.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, David, was he a aerobics instructor?
I think that is the thing is that, maybe he's an aerobics instructor, maybe he's her lover. I don't know. I mean, I think again, that's one of the reasons that I chose this piece is because it's that thing of how you receive the work. Like some people will pick up that there's something more than just a teacher-student relationship, because at the end, things become a bit blurred, they go into this space where they dance together, like what kind of dance is that? So I think he could be an aerobics instructor, he could.